too much more to say on the relabeling of God, but I appreciate the call, and I want to go ahead and get started on the stuff that Tracy brought in.
All right, great. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Appreciate it. I should ask him how the weather was in Singapore. That was going to be my shtick. You know, somebody calls in from outside. I ask them, "How's the weather?" "Ah, you should be in Austin."
It's beautiful.
I got short sleeves and the air on.
And I'm wearing a scarf.
Yeah, she's wearing a scarf, and I'm in short sleeves.
I'm always freezing in the studio, though. That's why.
It can get a little chilly in here, except in the summer. So
wait, let's do the first chunk.
yeah, let's get started. So if you're on the line, please hang on because we want to get started on the subject for today, and you don't necessarily have to talk about that.
Okay. Today I brought a model that I made that is meant to demonstrate particular fallacies. And I find it interesting because in my mind this thing demonstrates a load of fallacies. It's not just one. It's like handles a lot of them. And the way these are set up, what they model is, in this jar there is existent dice.
Can we get zoomed in a little bit?
You can see them. It's a jar with dice inside it. Is there a close-up or is it not working? Okay, and then in the second jar, I have non-existent dice. And in the final jar, I have transcendent supernatural dice. And for the sake of the first, I guess, game or experiment or a demonstration, we're going to accept that the supernatural transcendent dice, in fact, are existent. So we're going to say that in this jar are supernatural transcendent dice. In this jar is non-existent dice, and in this jar we have existent dice. I was going to bring a kitchen scale, but I think I can describe that part of it without demonstrating it, and people will understand what I was going to do, which was to take the dice out of the jar, weigh the jar, put the dice back in the jar, weigh the jar, and demonstrate that the die add weight so that they have mass and weight. But you can also see that they reflect light, that we can observe them because they reflect light, and also they make a considerably annoying tonal sound, so that they do make, sound. They are responsible for sound waves when they clink around and hit the jar. So they have some substantial material existence that is fairly well demonstrated, just simply inherently by the dice. And so for the first thing I want to do, I want to put the camera on Matt for just a second. Just on Matt. Okay. And now I want to come back to the jars. Okay. Now I've put the jars all together, and what I want to ask to consider is what we want to do now is separate these things into two groups. We want to separate into a group of existent items with the assumption that the supernatural transcendent dice exist, and non-existent items, which would be the group with the non-existent dice.
Okay.
And so my question is, how do we do that?
We guess. I'm going to guess that those are the ones that don't exist.
Well, how do we know if you're right?
You could just take it on faith.
In other words, we have no criteria with which to determine whether or not Matt chose the right jar, whether or not he pulled the non-existent dice out, or whether he actually pulled the existent transcendent and supernatural dice out. We can't test it because the supernatural dice have the exact same attributes as the non-existent dice. There is no difference between the two. And the problem when we define something as supernatural and transcendent and then we give it all of the same material qualities as nothing in a context of dice,
right,
we basically eviscerate the term existence and exist because we no longer have any criteria that determines what exists from what does not exist. And so we have to kill the word exist in order to say that supernatural transcendent dice exist. It no longer has meaning because it's no longer discernible from non-existence. So I wanted to just sort of demonstrate that. We've talked about it before on the show, but I wanted to kind of show how it works.
Yeah, and oddly enough, if I'd have grabbed this one and said this is the one that doesn't exist, that would have just been stupid.
Right.
And this isn't a matter of just being able to see it.
Right.
And as you mentioned, you know, there's
can
weight.
hear it, you can
doesn't
weigh
matter.
it,
Whatever characteristics
Right.
you give to
Right.
something that which exists in reality. I mean,
Right.
that's what we're talking about is within the construct of reality. What is real? And in part, you could make the argument that maybe one of these contains more molecules of air than that one, and
Sure.
we're unable to discern which one's which right now.
Sure.
That's you're correct, and that's a limitation on our ability to discern at this moment at this table.
Right.
But in a lab we could.
Right.
And then you could say that, well, maybe there's just our inability to discern the difference between a transcendent existent object and a non-existent object is just a limitation of our ability to discern. Maybe it is.
Yeah, fine. We still need criteria for existence.
Yeah.
So if that is,
The
if
point,
existence,
though, is that if it's beyond our ability to discern,
Right.
you can't make any statement about which one is.
Existence
so you can't,
is-
it exists, you just can't tell it.
existence is whatever is materially manifest,
Yeah.
and what is not is considered non-existent until such time as it demonstrates a material manifestation. It is possible that there are supernatural die in this jar.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if we can't tell them apart from non-die,
Yeah. And
what is the difference between nothing and the something that is the same as nothing?
Yeah, and I'm trying to avoid getting hung up on the visible or the tactile or anything else like
Right.
that. The analogy here, if we remove these,
Right.
and we just have these two, and one of them has transcendent existent dice, and the other one has nothing, there's no dice, non-existent dice. What's happening when you talk to people who believe in a God or who believe in the supernatural, they're saying, this is the one that has the transcendent dice in it, and I can tell, and I'm sorry that you can't tell, but I know that this is the one. And, okay, how do you know? You can get all kinds of different answers.
Right, and we're gonna
These
talk about
dice
that.
have revealed themselves to me.
Right.
Really? Then
Well,
do it again.
Well, that's one of the things I have here later, but we can talk
I'm
about
jumping
it.
ahead.
That's okay. One of the things, if you switch over to the next page on number 5, one of the things I said is,
Although,
if I feel or believe, oh, okay. Do you want to go to that?
yeah.
Okay.
So keep that burning in your mind for a little while, because we have on the line a caller from last week, Matt Slick from Carm.org. You there, Matt?